looking at some statements that Angela Merkel, German chancellor, recently made at an event where she said nation states must today be prepared to give up their sovereignty. And this is in the name of their New World Order plan, globalist leaders like Merkel. So the direct quote was that nation states must be prepared to give up their sovereignty. And then German Chancellor Angela Merkel goes on to explain how this ties in with the European Union and globalist plans for these various policies that have been increasingly rejected. Angela Merkel saying that she will not seek another term. That's something that she'd also said very recently as she's making these statements, though. So it's interesting. It seems like some of these leaders, like Merkel, and younger leaders like Macron, who people have called puppets of the Rothschild. One politician in France, people were calling on him to be investigated for calling Macron President Rothschild, given his background as a banker and also, of course, the support of these exact sorts of policies. Trudeau has also been called a globalist puppet for people like Soros or Rothschild. Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, here he is with John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, with his declining popularity as well. He's recently injecting another $600 million into the Canadian media for what he calls trusted journalists, basically people looking at this as a bribe of Canadian media in order to prop up Trudeau. People are waking up to politicians like Trudeau and Macron, basically saying that they're just puppets of the New World Order, of the globalists. And in Merkel's case, she's not even seeking re-election, trying to save the image of some of these younger politicians like the Macrons and Trudeaus and doing their best, it seems. But there is a sense of desperation in these recent moves by Merkel and Macron and others. It's interesting to watch some of these recent statements, how forward they are. It seems almost as though they know that their popularity is declining, so they're trying to ramp things up and basically pushing things ahead of schedule. Maybe they don't have as much time as they thought they did as these populist governments come in and start replacing different administrations throughout Europe. So Merkel feeling the pressure, just coming right out and saying it, that countries need to give up their sovereignty, telling this to an audience in Berlin, saying that sovereign nation states must not listen to the will of their citizens. Nations should not listen to their citizens when it comes to questions of immigration, borders, or even sovereignty. That's what Merkel is saying. Need to do this to save the New World Order. She's arguing. Merkel has announced that she won't seek re-election in 2021, and it is clear that she is attempting to push the globalist agenda to its disturbing conclusion before she stands down. So this article is, again, similar to what I believe might be behind these recent statements. In an orderly fashion, of course, Merkel joked at the same event, attempting to lighten the mood, but Merkel has always had a tin ear for comedy, and she soon launched into a dark speech condemning those in her own party who think Germany, she has condemned those from her own party who think that Germany should have listened to the will of its citizens and refused to sign the controversial UN migration pact. It's a big part of this as well. Another quote says, there were politicians who believed that they could decide when these agreements are no longer valid because they were representing the people. But the people are individuals who are living in a country. They are not a group who define themselves as the German people, Merkel stressed. Merkel has previously accused critics of the UN Global Compact for safe and orderly migration of not being patriotic. Anyone who opposes this migration pact, she said, is not patriotic, saying this is not patriotism because patriotism is when you include others in German interests and accept a win-win situation. Her words echo recent comments by deeply unpopular French President Emmanuel Macron, pretty similar to the speech that he gave recently on Remembrance Day. Got a lot of criticism as well for this, but this was kind of a veiled attack on President Trump as well from Macron, where he said that patriotism is the exact opposite of nationalism because nationalism is treason. So these are some pretty over-the-top statements. That was from Macron. People shared that after Remembrance Day, and again, more recently, Merkel, similar type of statement. But I'm wondering if you would have seen these sorts of things. Again, it does seem like they are getting desperate in a way and being so forward with this, Macron, Merkel's, and others. So they're straight out saying that patriotism is the opposite of nationalism. Nationalism is treason. That's what Macron has recently said as well. Tying in to Merkel's statements, French president's words were deeply unpopular with the French population. And since Remembrance Day, his approval rating has continued to nosedive even further after the comments. It was already on its way down. People had a lot of questions about the election and possible meddling in the French election as well. How was Macron elected in the first place? But nonetheless, his popularity has continued to decline, especially recently. These yellow vest movements have really picked up. This article closes off saying Macron, whose lack of leadership is proving unable to deal with growing protests in France, told one outlet that France and Germany should be at the center of the emerging New World Order. The Franco-German couple has the obligation not to let the world slip into chaos and to guide it on the road to peace. Europe must be stronger and win more sovereignty. Europe must win over more sovereignty, he went on to demand, just like Merkel, that the EU member states, all member states, must surrender national sovereignty over foreign affairs, migration, and development, as well as giving an increasing part of our budgets and even fiscal resources. So have to give our resources over to the New World Order and all choices over foreign affairs, migration, and development. Pretty unpopular for Macron to come right out and say that. And given comments from others like Rothschild, we looked at this article. I've pulled this one up a couple of times from Rothschild, Jacob Rothschild, saying that he is worried about the New World Order, or he said the New World Economic Order is part of the post-war order that they put in place, he says, and again, calling out some of the same issues that Macron and Merkel have, these populist movements, these nationalist movements, and in Rothschild's case, he's basically, this was from a few months back, but it looked like he was threatening a economic crash or some sort of market crash because he's not getting his way politically. So similar statement from Rothschild recently. Pretty interesting to see what Merkel and Macron are saying. Merkel's not seeking re-election. What's going to happen with Macron? That'll be interesting. His popularity continues to decline, and others like Trudeau, who's just injected $600 million in bribes into his own media in his own country to try to save himself. He has an election. There's a Canadian election coming up in 2019 as well. So it will be interesting to keep an eye on these various governments. Let me know what you think. I do have a link to the original article in the video description. I also have a link to my Patreon account. Thanks everybody that has supported the channel through there, patreon.com/realityreader. A PayPal link in the description as well, paypal.me/realityreader. Help the channel over there, paypal.me/realityreader. Also have an article link. Tell me what you think. I will follow up soon. Thank you.